Okay, hello everyone. The title of today's episode. So, hello everyone. I wanted to speak about a very interesting idea. The idea that one day, just like how comfortably we enter a coffee shop to get a coffee, we might enter a space station to get something. There must be a term for this which I'm not aware of, but human beings constantly adjust their standard of comfort. Right now, human beings are comfortable with dialogue. The species is at a dialogue level. When we see a human being, we see a possibility of movement. It's either movement in the outer realms or inner realms. Movement in the outer realms is relocating the concept, and in some sense, movement in the inner realms is relocating the context, you could say. So, just like in the future, you know, let's say your docking request is approved, your access to the space station is verified. The idea is we are being something that if the past saw us, they would be like, how are these guys comfortable with phones? How is the average human being in 2023, let's say the people in 1000, right? In the year 1000, they're like, how are these guys 1,000 years ahead so comfortable with technology? How are they comfortable sitting on a computer? How are they comfortable using a phone? How are they comfortable accessing information archives online? Right? So when we wonder how the past would look at us now, they would be astonished. And so we should have this attitude that how we look at the future now, we will be astonished as well. So what it is that the future will be so ahead of us, and we will be, that sense of being ahead will be so normal by then that we will be thinking ahead. The human being is always thinking ahead, right? You may own whatever you possess in this moment right now. Your mind has considered greater possessions. This doesn't mean that the human being is a possessive animal, because that's a very deep idea of what attention possesses, it becomes, right? Like they say the food you eat, you become. Similarly, what your mind consumes, which is another way of saying what comes into your attention, your mind becomes. If you listen to these Mr. Within lectures often, most likely your mind's going to become the mind of a human being, where the destiny of your human species is important for you. You know? So, I'm trying to zoom in. First of all, these Mr. Within talks, they're all about the advancement of civilization. That's the point. The point is trying to update some part of of the human perspective. you know. So I guess we'll start from here, that you have your own perception and there is something called a perspective. So the same difference you have between your perception and perspective, I've modernized this, and with my own language of, let's say, a Mr. Withinian school of thought, pretty much if a human being comes and asks me, okay, how do you see humans? I'll be like, I see a biological organism that took a long time, that was a long time in the making. This biological organism has an ability to look outside of its eyes and engage with visible formed factors to reality. Behind its eyes, it has the space to move these forms of reality. So in front of your eyes, you're accessing an existential physical world where everybody else you see is also in this world. So in front of your eyes, we are in the same physical server of consciousness. But behind your eyes, your consciousness also has access to a private server. So when we think about the future, we're wondering about what's going to happen to the access of the outer server of the server of existence, and what's going to happen to the server of experience. Right? So what it is that you have been present in two worlds from the beginning of your conscious life, but you have not realized this. Actually, it's three worlds. But for modern times, we got to say two so they don't freak out. Right? Like the way I would speak to a theist is very different than how I would speak to an atheist. Why? Because for the atheist, the unknown factor is assigned to the mind. The atheist is like, yo, man, I don't know about God. I don't know about soul. I know that I have this mind and we don't know what consciousness is. All right, we'll keep the topic there for the atheist. But for the theist is a completely different discussion. The theist knows there are unknown variables, but has assigned the unknown variables to a collective management system. Right? So a religious person is living a completely different life than a non-religious person. Why? Because the administration of eventhood has a different assigning, you know? So that's important to keep that in mind. We are assigning meaning to reality, then functioning in accordance to what we have assigned. Now, the next thing about when it comes to the future and the future generations, I want you to imagine, let's say you're someone who has kids. If you have kids, this is going to be easy for you to imagine. But if you don't have kids, I want you to imagine your great grandchildren. I want you to imagine you had kids, they had kids, those kids had kids, and those kids had kids, and somehow you could see what that would look like. If you were to imagine the future generations, you will pretty much reach this mindset where you're like, okay, how am I experiencing life now? How can this pattern revolutionize in the future? Okay, so right now, the way, for example, I'm existing, right, the way I'm noticing human conduct is in self-maintenance mode. When I see every human being, they're busy maintaining themselves. Let's say there's like, people look at politicians and they're like, yo, man, look at these corrupt dogs. Like, do you know what I mean? Like there's there's that attitude, right? But at the same time, wait a minute, these are not just corrupt dogs. These are beings that have managed to surpass self-maintenance. It's as if the person was so good at managing themselves, they started managing others. They were so good at managing others that they started to manage a community. They were so good at managing communities, they started to manage towns. They were so good at managing towns, they started to manage a nation. They were so good at managing a nation that they started to manage nations. Eventually, management led to such a point where we realize we don't want individuals to just be self-sustaining. We want the whole thing to be self-sustaining. I want to create a world where if my child, great-great-great-great-great-grandchild makes a mistake, the great-great-great-grandchildren of everybody else will have that kid's back. I want to raise the children of the future generations, not in the sense of being their dad, Okay, I don't want that. What I want is, like, imagine, there's a bunch of advanced soldiers just waiting. They're just waiting, doing nothing. They're just polishing, their equipment. Or let's say not soldiers. Let's say an advanced group of designers. Imagine the most 8 billion of the most next level designers in the cosmos, beings that are capable of designing sophisticated moments. Okay, 8 billion designers are just waiting. And then imagine there is like some celestial force, some celestial might just passing by and being like, wait a minute, we have all these incredible trained individuals on earth, yet their training is going to waste because there isn't the trust in the administrator. You see, in front of your eyes, leadership is among humans, but behind your eyes, leadership is up to the divine. I wasn't a truly religious person until in my attempts, in my intense attempt of trying to surpass myself, I reached a point where I realized it's not just human intelligence at work. So when it's not like human intelligence at work, it's as if there is something in the room. When Terence McKenna said this incredible sentence, there is another tenant in the room, he meant that there is another intelligent movement. There is there is another presence of intelligent activity on this earth aside from humanity. But this intelligent activity, this is now different from what Terence McKenna says. This is what I'm saying, what Mr. Within is saying to you. Pretty much, I think out of all the human beings on this earth, we are in symbiosis with a collective force. Because I am religious, for me, this collective force is God. Because I decided, all right, do I want to go and talk to the owner of a company, or do I want to talk about with the employees or the management? Think about it. You want to invest in a company. Do you want to go speak to the owner of the company? Do you want to go to speak to some employee of the company, or do you want to go speak to the management? You go to speak to the employee of the company. They're like, I don't know who the owner is, man. You go speak to the management. They're like, yo, man, I'm the manager. Anything you need to bring up with the owner, bring up with me. So you're kind of left being like, wait a minute, I go to the employee, I go to another human being, they don't know what the meaning of life is. Okay, I go to some divine relationship, some divine intelligence, and they say, just work with me. I'm the manager. If you want to worship a god, in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, it says, the god that you worship will manage you after this life. Your mind is not just, yo, man, how adorable, I had thoughts. They are universe captures, universal capturings. Do you know what that means? That means every moment your state of mind has been influenced by a perspective. That perspective has been a signal sent to the whole cosmos. If you want to destroy something, you're sending that signal to the cosmic activity. You're going to align to creatures of destruction. If you create, you will align to creatures of creation. But in a world that's self-destructive, that can be self-destructive, pretty much you need to care for the potential of life more than its absence. Do you know what it feels like to be present within an advanced humanity? Do you know how much more advanced your species can behave and be, and yet it's dependent on all of you? There are some people where they need to free their mind so they can free their body. There are some people who need to realize the freedom that is their soul to be able to utilize their mind. I'm not an expert, I don't have a degree on mysticism. All I have is that, I'm this human being who was shocked by his existence at all. Just by the fact that I am existing at all was like an offense. It's as if I am offended. What has manifested? What has awakened me from the slumber of non-existence? Why am I manifest? And the only answer that comes to me is because there is work to be done. There is great work to be done. Your life belongs to you if you only see you. If you see your species, your life belongs to your species. What service are you giving, right? If you are someone who you have created children, let's say you have children right now. You've brought children into this world. You have done an advanced service to humanity. It might not be equivalent to creating the most advanced computer, but it is as equivalent as creating someone who can create the most advanced computer. You see, we are a force. To be a human being is an archetype. If this archetype fades, we forget what we are. Consciousness descends to animalhood. Do you understand? That means if we mess up being human, we might suddenly jump into being fish. We might suddenly jump into, imagine fish having wives and husbands, right? And children. Do you understand? The consciousness paradigm, it leaps in accordance to its capability. It's like if you were someone, speaking to someone who is a yogi and speaking to someone who is a Muslim, like a priest, is completely different. The yogi has discovered God internally. The priest, the saint, has understood God externally. The priest. So you must realize that without a consideration of both forces, you must honor your existence, but you must also honor the totality of your existence, which is your consciousness, which is your mind. Have you honored your mind in this life, or have you just tried to be a body, with a dancing soul? Let me tell you, and I'm going to specially say this to women, right? Just in general to women, right? And of course, I'm not saying this in an absolutist perspective. If we don't do this, we mess up as a species. I am just saying this to any human being, to any conscious being. Being born as a human being, or logging into the wakefulness, that is the first moment where you're like, yo, am I a person right now? When you have that consciousness, it's like you have appeared inside a vehicle. Imagine you opened your eyes and you were inside a moving Ferrari. And you thought you were the Ferrari. Do you know what that means? That means you have opened your eyes in the middle of being a part of a cosmic event. You're the cosmos acting like a human. Did you know that? That means if an extraterrestrial lands on Earth and I see that the extraterrestrial's kind of like evil, I would look at the extraterrestrial and I would be like, attacking us is like attacking yourself. You are part of this existence. We are part of this existence. How dare you hurt yourself? You see? The thing that human beings have an incredible ability, because we were conditioned due to survival. We had to survive, to be honest, fucked up scenarios. When you look at history, what do you think you're seeing in history? History is the story of fucked up moments turning out all right. There is always a challenge. Now, the challenge can be external or internal. If the challenge is external, if you compare yourself to outer entities, okay, you're gonna have emotions based on your idea. That means if someone is not an idea to themselves, how can they get emotional? I'm one of those people who can answer this. You dehumanize, but on some level, there is this divine authority that you can never become less than what you are, and you can never become more than what you've been, what your given potential is. What does this mean? This means that every human being has a role to play. You have a role to play here. You have a role, for example, in my existence to play by being a viewer. You know, people don't understand what sort of moment I'm in when I'm giving these talks. It's like before, you know, it's kind of like, you know how I feel? I feel like, this is very bizarre I'm saying this, but I don't know if it's like I'm not God. You know, the creator is not the creation. The artist is not the artwork. The artwork cannot act with the same sophistication as the artist. So I don't know what God's plan is. But I feel, I have felt this my whole life, that I need to be at the frontiers of an important structure of humanity. You don't, I don't know if you know what this feels like. It's like feeling you need to be somewhere which you cannot fathom where, but you feel like you need to already be there. To continue. So the effort of human attention in a landscape. We have to help our world whenever we can. That's my view. You help it until it no longer needs help. You advance civilization until it can back itself up constantly, right? Imagine a civilization where people are mad only about the time, not the service. Imagine the quality of services rise. Whoever you are right now, okay, wherever you are, I want you to, the next time you're in any space, it could be your room, it could be at work, it could be anywhere, it could be in a coffee shop, wherever you are, take an advanced break. An advancement break is like pausing everything that's going on and trying to look at the moment and be like, what's another more advanced way? What's a more advanced way I can sit on this chair? What's a more advanced way I can use this time? And once you wonder about this, you start assigning new value to new moments, and you realize your mind has an ability to assign value on anything. Do you understand? You could see someone and assign the value of, like, my future husband, my future wife. Do you see? You can look at something and assign a value. This is mine. What the idea of possession is that attention has been limited to a boundary. This is why it was never easy to master something, because once you master something, you control something fully. For example, as a human, when it has come to the ability to speak or explain things, I have done this so much where I've attained a mastery. So when I get bored, I play with words. So it's either speak about deep ideas about the most important values in human civilization. Then if I can't do that, play around with the architecture that is leading to the value. You know, the Mr. Within name, hopefully in the future, it will be synonymous with the most advanced initiatives, you know, taking place. And it has to start with you. Believe it or not, something new is happening here. Whoever you are listening, because there's so many YouTubers, you know, you may not be able to discriminate between what you hear from me and what you hear from others. But I want you to think of it this way, that if YouTube and being famous online was like a city on the ground, okay, imagine there's something called Popular City, okay, or Popular Social Media City, okay, and they created a city like just, you know. And so for me, I'm like, imagine if all the people who are famous and in mainstream media, they're like birds that are walking on the ground. I'm someone who's still flying in the sky, very far from the ground. I can see the ground, but I am not close to it. I can see how masses of attention of human beings move on this earth. I can see it. Just like if there was like a herd of buffalo moving, I could see how herds of human beings, they're based on their attention and how they have ascribed meaning to accept it, they in some sense become categorized. When I look at human beings, I see three dimensions. And this might be my bias, but I think this has worked for me fine so far. What is the idea? The idea is simply this. If human beings are snatching the highest value, right now we are in a snatching civilization. I didn't realize this based on my upbringing, but I realized that there is levels to reality, which it's all about how much ordered variables, how much chaotic variables are there. So guys, there's 5% battery on my phone. I gotta find a way to charge this, or it's the end. It's like, yo, Mr. Within's talk ended so abruptly. Is he that kind of speaker? I mean, yeah, when his phone dies randomly. It's sustenance for my cell phone. Let's continue. You see, I pretty much went up a hierarchy of values. And I asked myself, what is there to want in this world? What is the greatest value to want in this world? And what does it mean to want something? Because how can you want something that is not in your awareness? If I don't know there's a great business opportunity, how can I want it? To be honest, everything, your life, this is what I'm realizing. It took me a while to realize this, but I think I'm getting the hang of it. So pretty much the notion is this: you have a body, in front of your eyes you have a world, behind your eyes you have a mind. This mind takes a copy of the world, shifts it, stretches out, adjusts it, and then in accordance to the adjustment to what can there be, what can happen in front of my eyes, that in behind your eyes, it's already done and you just follow it through. So for example, if you notice, when you want a glass of water, your mind just gets a glimpse of yourself like getting the water from the fridge, and you just get up and do it. You see, so the mind is living ahead of the body. Because it is living ahead of the body, it is functioning, it is projecting a version of the world where there is freedom. That's how we have imagination. Our minds are seeing deviations to what we consider external reality. But this whole time, there has been two realities. Reality has been like a double-edged sword. There is an inner realism and there's the outer realism. When my eyes are open and I'm looking in a mirror and I'm like, who am I? It's very obvious. It's like the answer's in front of me. But when I close my eyes and I ask, who am I? Or when I really in the mirror look at my eyes, I don't know if you've done this, but there's been moments I've looked in the mirror And I've looked so deeply in my eyes. They say the eyes are the window of the soul. And so this kid started to look in his own eyes. And he began to realize, I don't know what I'm looking at. Honestly, the mind doesn't have a body that is shaped. So what it is we're this intelligence that can function with body and without body. How do we know? Because when I'm waiting in the line at the bank or the ATM, my mind is thinking of, what am I going to do after this? What am I going to do after this? My mind can not only reposition reality, it can reanimate it. So you are, this whole time, you've been living in accordance with an ability to see a physical world and interact with it, but also with an ability to realign this physical world and live in accordance to that realm. So you can live in accordance to two worlds, the world behind your eyes and the world in front of it. But when you align these two, the value of life changes. Let me tell you something, for example, about how my mind works. In 2014-15, I stepped into an introverted state that lasted 10 years. Not 10 years, like 9 years. I went into this hermitude of 9 years where I decided to just live as a mind. That means my body became for the first time secondary. My being a mental being became primary. There was a cost to this, a sort of decrease in health. But what is looking now has a depth to it that it didn't have before. And somehow it's been managed to share this depth with others. To be honest, I analyze my own talks, the way I have a relationship with them. Like right now, the time is 11:05. I would go on YouTube and just type in the search bar MW1105. And while I do something, I listen to it. And I've mastered the ability to listen to people without caring for to listen to people and without their personality. So there's a way a person can say something, and then there's what's being said. I can listen to what's being said in the sense where I just gave myself this ability that anything I hear, it's like a lecture. What I realized is that the lectures weren't only in universities. Every moment you hear something, the world is communicating. Think of it. You can change channels. YouTube is like a radio station, but instead you can see all the radio waves at once. The people who listen to these talks most likely are like two kinds. Those who care for the future and those who don't. If you don't care for the future because you feel consciousness is an ever-presence, unchanging ever-presence, you're not living like a human being. These lectures are for humanity. This means that it doesn't matter how spiritual you are, it doesn't matter how religious you are, it doesn't matter how oblivious you are. What matters is, it does matter how oblivious you are, but what matters is how did human beings go forth in the space-time continuum. This far surpasses spirituality. Spirituality was nice, cool, okay, exciting, interesting. Then it's like the next thing is a completely different vibe. There is a type of vibe where the coach is telling all the players like, yo, you're going to go in the field and the opponents are going to try to crush you. And I want you guys to not have an ego, to be benevolent, vicious animals, excuse me, not vicious, benevolent, furious animals, benevolent fury. That means there is a might that cannot be pushed back. And this might, because it knows mighty, the only option it has to be benevolent. When I see cruel, powerful people, I see beings that feel they are not powerful. You might not believe it, but some of the most insecure people attain power, so the power wakes them up from the insecurity so they can live as a mind. You can live as a mind if you realize there is a conduct. So when you go into a library, there's a conduct of behavior. When you try to live as a mind that's moving a body, when your mind's in the driver's seat, the conduct is patience. Anybody who is in a rush. Oh سلام خوبی؟
خوبی؟ برو کارتو بکن.
Small world. Guys, I just met somebody I know. I'm gonna make this probably part 1. Honor your life by honoring all that life can be. If you right now wanted to be an advanced being, let's start from a selfish view, okay? For anybody who's like, Mr. Within, I don't know what you're saying. I enjoy being a narcissist.